The witnesses at the hearing included representatives of about 8 radio and TV stations in Montgomery. They were subpoenaed and told to bring copies of news stories and tapes regarding Jerome Turner from May 8th to the present, including all comments by public officials pertaining to the case. Radio station WHHY filed a motion to quash the subpoena, saying it was unreasonably broad and oppressive, and that it was asking too much to expect radio station employees to search for every piece of information broadcast about Turner. The judge ruled that the radio station should present its files for the lawyers to search through if necessary. Judge Thomas closed the courtroom and excluded the witnesses so they couldn't hear each other's testimony. He also ordered them not to report on what was said in the hearing, saying further publicity could violate the firefighters' rights to a fair trial. Thomas says he'll make transcripts of the hearing available as soon as he feels they won't endanger the defendant's rights. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Keep working. Work.
Good shot. Beat it. You bounce hard, bro. Beat it.
Turn loose. I've tried, this is a culmination basically of a dream I had, I guess about 10 years ago. I said I wanted to know if I could work, and I mean, you know, work long, hard hours and still be competitive in amateur golf, and this is a tremendous thrill for me. It really is. It is. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
One of the most outstanding facilities of its kind in the Southeast. It's been acknowledged by many people in the field as being outstanding. We have 11 registered architects and approximately 20 other highly skilled professionals. I'll tell you about the architectural firm of Pearson, Humphreys, Jones & Associates. This is my associate Charles Humphreys, and left, and John Yee is looking up the screen. We're here today to tell you why we feel that we're best qualified to be selected as your architect of record.
Space education, search and rescue, which is the one most of us know about, and the cadet program. They spent last year some 30,000 man days helping out in things like the Hurricane Frederick in Mobile and the Mount St. Helens activity that's still ongoing. And as a matter of fact, we reimbursed them less than $400,000, and we figure it would have cost the Air Force about $24.5 million to do the same job if we had to use our own equipment.
We need to take care of. Won't keep you more than a couple of minutes. minutes following the luncheon. I'll remind you.
He said, did you really go through pilot training before you finished high school? And it's true, I did. You could ongoing. And as a matter of fact, we reimbursed them less than $400,000, and we figure it would have cost the Air Force about $24.5 million to do the same job if we had to use our own equipment. So.
The declaration of a state of emergency by Governor James means the state can take whatever action necessary to help out those victims most affected by the triple-digit temperatures.
If it goes on many, many more days with 100-plus temperatures all over the state, certainly there are going to be a lot more fatalities if certain precautions aren't taken. The governor's proclamation just brings attention to the seriousness of the situation and hopefully would encourage the public as well as public and private agencies to attend to the situation.
In Birmingham, where Mayor Richard Arrington declared a disaster situation yesterday, civil defense officials are setting up air-conditioned shelters for those who can't find any other means to escape from the blistering heat of the day. Governor James's declaration would also allow other communities to set up similar shelters with the help of National Guardsmen. Another benefit of the declaration is the use of National Guardsmen, should it become necessary, to haul water to areas that are experiencing shortages, and there are plenty of them. A shortage of water in Eclectic hampered firemen's efforts last night to put out a forest fire. Water shortages have forced a form of rationing in a number of cities throughout the state, where many local officials say their tanks will run dry by midweek if residents don't cut down on the use of water to wet down their lawns or wash their cars. The state prison system is putting large fans in prison dormitories to cool off prisoners who've been pulled in off farm work programs during the afternoons for as long as that heat wave continues to bear down on the state. The State Highway Department is keeping a close eye on highways built out of concrete. Already, several concrete segments in the Birmingham interstate system have begun to crack or buckle as they expand in the heat. The news from the Weather Service officials isn't encouraging. More hot temperatures in the 100-degree range are forecasted for the rest of the week. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
And save a whole lot, and this is why we're going to it. The cities that have a basic trash truck cost $30. Any chance I can do it. So having looked at the system we're contemplating in other cities and sending staff members to other cities,
Tommy Brown is a 77-year-old stroke patient. He lives in an unair-conditioned house since his old home burned down last winter while residents were trying to keep warm. Today, Brown has the opposite problem, but a woman from the Council on Aging brought him a fan to alleviate some of his discomfort.
I've been here 77 years. I ain't never seen it this hot. Around 90 and something and 100, but I visit 100 and something, 108 and 110. I ain't never seen it this hot.
So you were really glad to have this fan to help keep you cool?
Yes, ma'am. Very goodness.
Many Montgomeryans have responded to the appeal for fans and air conditioners for the elderly. They're lending their fans to the Council on Aging, which distributes them to the needy. Response has been good.
Fantastic. Everyone has just been calling and bringing things. We've had a man offer to let us use his home. He said he was willing to pick up people and take them there and use the air conditioner during the day. We've had a couple of businesses in town buy fans and say they're bringing over like half a dozen fans each, this type of thing. The people in the city of Montgomery are fantastic when it comes to something like this.
If you know someone who needs help or can give help, you can call the Montgomery Area Council on Aging or bring your fans by the office at 1949 Walnut Street after 7 in the morning. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Neil Wade, spokesman for Alabama Power, says the utility has surpassed last year's peak of energy consumption for the same period by 11%. He says the power company is basically operating on its own to provide service with a minimum amount of help from the Southern Company pool of Georgia, Mississippi, and Gulf Power. Wade says Alabama power plants are operating to capacity, but if the company loses one major generating plant, it could be serious. Wade says service will not be cut off because of a customer's inability to pay high utility bills.
Any customer who feels like they need special consideration in paying their bills, we want to make available that opportunity that we will work with them on an individual basis, those residential customers who feel like they're going to have a problem with their high utility bills as a result of this unprecedented heat wave.
Wade says conservation of energy is vital during the heat wave. Customers are urged to set thermostats no lower than 78 degrees and to use heat-producing appliances early in the morning or late at night. Draperies should be kept closed to keep out direct sunlight. Exhaust fans to draw out heat and humidity should be used in homes. Wade says it's been 30 years since the utility has been called on to provide so much comparable service for such an extended period. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
We're certainly not going to cut any.
Everywhere you look, there are reminders of just how hot it is. Just walking in the heat of the day is exhausting enough, not to mention working in it. As a result, air conditioners are selling like hotcakes. Many appliance stores have sold out completely and are having to reorder to fill the great demand.
Ever since the heat wave has arrived, the air conditioners have left. I could sell many more if I could get them, but they are not available. I've checked with several of my areas, Miami, Toledo, Greensboro, North Carolina, and have a call in to Alaska.
The heat wave has also caused a boom in air conditioning repairs.
Ledbetter Plumbing?
We talked with Marie Ledbetter, who works for a local air conditioning service.
Well, since 4th of July, we've been working till way in the night.
What do people say when you tell them that you can't come right now?
We're dying. It's hot.
There are no signs of the heat wave letting up. And while that may be bad news for most of us, it's good news and extremely good business for air conditioning salesmen who have air conditioners to sell, and for air conditioning repairmen who have air conditioning units to repair. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Yes.
Well, I'll be a spokesperson for them, and long before I became part of the KinderCare family, I felt that quality child care was our biggest problem that families faced for the future, with so many women going back to work or continuing to work right after having children. Something has to be done about these children, and there are relatively few areas where people who can afford it can get quality child care.
"98% of Mobile's 400 firemen walked out following 15 months of attempts to negotiate with the city. Compounding the problem, paramedics are also on the picket line while the city swelters through a record heat wave. A few hours after the strike began, National Guard troops began arriving at fire stations to relieve battalion chiefs who have been left to protect the city. The strike is also affecting the city's airport, where Coast Guardsmen have been pressed into service to provide fire protection. At this point, no negotiations have been scheduled in the first walkout by uniformed employees in the city's history.
Hey! Were you shooting at me? Yeah. That's bad. Oh, super shot, right?
Well, the object, Phil, is to give a pro an opportunity to get together with his juniors and have a competition where he can play with his kids.
And you have age groups?
Right. We have 13 and under, 14, 15, 16, 17.
And the team that usually wins is the one that has some of those 13, 14, 15-year-olds making birdies to help the old pro, huh?
That's correct. And a lot of times they outplay the pro, too.
In their application, the Klan asked that they be allowed to march August 9th from the Western Electric plant on the Selma Highway to the steps of the state capitol. The Klan applied for a permit last year, but it came too late for council consideration. The Klan marched anyway and were arrested at the city limits for attempting to parade without a permit. Mayor Emery Fulmer says that while the march would create a financial burden on the city, he says he'll allow the march to take place, despite what happened last year, and if they agree to his terms.
I believe in the right of free assembly and public assembly as long as it is peaceful. We can handle it if you want to grant it. But I say to you, I would ask you for the good order and peace and safety of the city that if you do grant it, that you make it a condition that their consent must be that they submit to a body search and a vehicle search of any vehicles that are in the parade.
Council members deferred action on the application until July 22nd. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
These trucks bring in dead chickens from the farms every day because some of the birds just can't survive in the extreme heat. Sylvester plant officials say they've exhausted every effort to keep their chickens alive and healthy by adding extra water and using fans. But with temperatures hovering around 100 degrees, almost nothing helps.
Chickens don't have sweat glands to provide themselves the same comforts that we do, so consequently they suffer quicker. After they have gone so long at suffering from heat exhaustion, then there's nothing to do but fall out and give up.
Watson says consumers should be warned that there's a good chance there will be a chicken shortage at the grocery store, along with higher prices. Beef cattle, on the other hand, aren't suffering as much. They're not dying because of the heat, but the grass is drying out, and farmers may have to start using feed earlier than usual, again, driving the prices up. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Millbrook Mayor Reginald Minter has declared a state of emergency in his city, and National Guardsmen are hauling in drinking water for the residents. Workers for the Tri-Community Water System have turned off the water until the 1-million-gallon storage tank is refilled. It ran dry this weekend, even after the leak was found. Officials say people were using the water faster than pumps could fill the reservoir. A big problem is sewage. Many people have septic tanks. Others are using the hauled-in water to flush their toilets. The Holiday Inn has lost about 60% of its guests as a result of the shortage, but the manager says they've hired trucks to bring in water and they'll remain open. In nearby Prattville, Water Board representatives say the city is in fairly good shape. As a precautionary measure, they're asking citizens to use water in moderation. With help from 250,000 gallons pumped in from the Grandview Pines system, Tri-Community customers should have water again Thursday afternoon or evening. But even then, water officials say they'll have to conserve to prevent another emergency. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Experts say consumers will definitely see an increase in beef and other food prices at the grocery store as a result of the heat wave. While poultry is dying from the heat, egg production is reported to be suffering also, with a drop of about 15%. Executive Director of the Alabama Farm Bureau Federation, John Dorrell, says pork, beef, and dairy production are also feeling the effects from the sweltering heat.
On pork, in the farrowing of the pigs, we're having some death losses here. And of course, in the production of the feeder pigs, we're having some loss in gains. And then in dairying, we're having loss in production because the heat is very harmful to milk production. And then in beef cattle production, they're not gaining much. It takes about all they can do to hold their weight, their gain, even though they don't graze as long, for instance.
Dorrell says fruit and vegetable farmers are reporting that their produce is ripening prematurely because of the heat, causing short supplies and increased prices. It's not yet known just how much of an increase consumers will be forced to pay. Agricultural officials said all depends on whether it rains within the next few days, and if it does, how much good it will do to alleviate the problems faced by the farmer and the livestock producers. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
They wanted a definitive answer. The only definitive answer that we could give them was that as of July 14th, 1980, there was no money for raising salary for the city employees. That's the truth.
Tuscaloosa's Paul Rogers in the far court defeated Davy Jones of Enterprise today, 5-7, 6-4, and 6-2 to reach the singles final in the boys' 14-year-old division. Rogers will meet the surprise of the tournament tomorrow, Montgomery's Skip Hinman. Hinman, who recently moved to the city from Texas, was not seeded when the championships began on Monday, but he has made a believer out of many. Hinman defeated the #1 seed, Tom Roberts of Alex City, today to reach the finals. And the Hinman-Rogers match will be just one of many finals played at O'Connor tomorrow morning.
Let's see, we've got the boys' 18 finals in the morning. Jeff Nichols from Mobile be playing a #1 seed. He's a #2 seed. He'll be playing #1 seed Mark Wilder of Jacksonville. They're both real strong. And we've got boys' 16s, which we finished them today. David Baggett, who was our local favorite #1 seed, was defeated by Stephen Denny from Dothan. And real impressive kid, 6'4", left-hander. He'll be heard from, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's looking good then, huh?
Right. We had a couple of our local kids came out on top. Linda Kim, who's only 10 years old. I guess I know everybody's heard of her.
She comes from a real tennis family.
Right, the whole family plays. She can almost see over the net, and she won the girls 14, 6-0, 6-0. So that tells you something about her.
Lane says the intense heat that has left the court scorching hot bothered many of the players earlier in the week, and it could be a factor in determining the winners tomorrow. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The first reason you needn't be surprised when your thermometer or a bank thermometer doesn't agree with the official reading is that temperatures just vary from place to place. We don't expect Montgomery's temperature to be the same as, say, Troy's, and in a city as large as ours, one side of town is usually going to be a little hotter or cooler than another. Such temperature variations over relatively short distances are most noticeable on days when there's little or no wind to mix the air and provide fairly uniform readings. But even on those days when the temperature is the same in your neighborhood as at the airport, there's a good chance that your thermometer and theirs still won't agree, because very few outdoor thermometers are installed so they'll measure accurately the temperature of the surrounding air mass. Many are mounted in direct sunlight. Others are measuring reflected heat from the ground or pavement or buildings. Still other thermometers, positioned where the air doesn't move freely, are giving the temperature of the air very close by, but not the temperature of the general air mass even a few feet away. Now, if we're going to take these readings as accurate, we might as well toss a thermometer in the back window of a parked car and report that the city reached 135 today. On the other hand, if we want to measure the temperature of the freely moving air and nothing else, we can install a good thermometer in a shelter such as this. Not only does it shield the thermometer from rain and snow, but it's also white to reflect sunlight, louvered on all sides so the air can flow through easily, and it's above sod, about 4 feet above sod, so the warmth of the ground won't significantly alter the reading. It's plain to see that measuring the temperature of the air is something a little more complicated than just tacking a cheap thermometer to the back wall of the house or to a tree near the back door. This is how scientists go about doing it. And though seeing how it's done won't keep us from getting hot, it may keep us from getting hot under the collar when the official temperature seems to be way off. I'm Dan Atkinson with WeatherBeat.
Although Gerald Ford may have been the first choice among some Republicans for the number 2 spot with Reagan on the presidential ballot, some members of the Alabama delegation at the convention say they're very pleased that George Bush was selected.
It's a very appealing ticket to all segments of the nation, and I'm very pleased not only because I've been working so hard for Mr. Bush for the last year, but because I feel it's a ticket that will beat Jimmy Carter and get him out of the White House and back to Georgia on the peanut farm where he belongs.
Do you think this ticket will put the Alabama Republicans on the same track, going in the same direction?
No doubt about it. We signed statements this evening signifying that we would all be willing to support the nominee for vice president that Reagan chose, and he's chosen Bush, so I foresee no dissension at all whatsoever in the Alabama delegation.
Bush's state campaign chairman Ray Scott says he's very enthusiastic about the Reagan-Bush ticket. He says there's a great deal of togetherness among Republicans now, and the factionalism that was evident earlier has dissolved. Scott says he and other members of the Alabama delegation in Detroit are anxious to get back home and begin campaigning for their candidate. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Well, Montgomery, operating rather conservatively, has always tried to pay for capital outlay expenditures as they were undertaken. So we do have some balance that we could draw on to offset those proration figures this year. And perhaps if we withstand a 10% proration figure yet next year, but no more, we could end up with a zero balance at the end of the next school year. But at that point, we would have a zero balance for the system.
I'm going to have to make many more putts and hit better golf shots, you know, at crucial times in my round. That's been my problem. I'll get 2 or 3 or 4 under par, and then, you know, the guys that are winning are stepping out and they're keeping making birdies, and it seems like I'll make a birdie and then I'll make a bogey. I can never get the momentum going to really shoot a low score, and, you know, when that happens, that's when I'll start winning.
You had a foot injury. The network commentators were telling us about it.
That happened like the last round at Memphis, and it was a thunderstorm. And right on my backswing on the 14th hole, a bolt of lightning hit. I thought it hit me. It scared me to death. And I dropped my club. I threw my club to my caddy and threw in my shoes, and I said, "I'll see you, later." And I started off running, and I got up to the CBS trailer. That was the closest place I could find. And I walked in there, and right after I'd quit running, and I looked down and I just hit the ground. My foot went out from under me, and I'd busted a blood vessel in my toe. I guess I'd stepped on a sprinkler head or something, but I was running so fast, I was scared to death. Really hurt, but.
Tim West of Montgomery and Jeff Nichols of Mobile teamed up to beat Mark Wilder of Jacksonville and Larry Cassini of Montgomery in the exciting 18-year-old boys doubles final. A measure of revenge for West, who finished 3rd in the singles competition, won earlier in the day by Wilder. West and Nichols won the doubles title in 3 sets, 6-1, 4-6, and 6-2. It wasn't so close in the boys' 14-year-old division, where a couple of Tuscaloosa youngsters, Paul Rogers and Jim Ragsdale, defeated Rusty Hudson and Brad Waller of Montgomery in their match today. In fact, Rogers and Ragsdale didn't lose a game, winning 6-love, 6-love. The 16-year-old girls' doubles final is the lone match scheduled tomorrow. In a semifinal match today, Susan Pierce and Khaki Montgomery, both Montgomery junior players, easily won over Elizabeth Daly and Carol Bryan of Daphne, Alabama, 6-love and 6-love. Other winners in their final matches today included the team of Joy Haber and David Baggett of Montgomery in the boys' 16 doubles, Mark Wilder in the boys' 18 singles final, and Skip Hinman, who was not seeded in the 14-year-old boys division, but won the singles crown today. 2 Montgomeryans won the tournament sportsmanship awards, Tim West for the boys and Susie Haber in the girls division. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Mr. Myrick, everybody's talking about the weather. I know that it must be having an enormous impact on Alabama agriculture, the Alabama farmers. Give us a quick, concise report on what's happening.
Well, Bob, just last week we began to be hit with this severe heat. Prior to that, we'd had isolated areas of drought throughout the state, but the real test is coming right now with this 102 and 3 degree heat. We don't know exactly what it's going to do to us, but the forecasts are that we'll be in this throughout this week. We've got some crops that already have been affected greatly. Corn production, for instance, broilers and hogs that are under a stress condition, and it's unknown as to what it's going to do to us.
Corn, I understand, is the hardest hit.
Corn would be the hardest hit because it's a lot of our corn's in the pollination stages, and even though you've got adequate moisture in the ground, 103 and 105 degree heat will kill the pollen, which pollinates the corn, and therefore you won't make any grain.
Well, then the long-range prognosis for the farmer of Alabama could be bad.
Could be, but one good rain could change that prediction.
Some months ago, President Carter, I'm shifting gears on you, but it addresses the problems of agriculture and Alabama farmers as well. President Carter had the endorsement of your organization, the Farm Bureau, in his grain embargo on Russia. I understand that you've had a change of heart, your organization has.
Yes, we have, Bob. In the beginning, you know, when the President of the United States declares that there is a national emergency, we're good, farmers are good Americans first and farmers second, so then we endorse the President's position of the embargo. But since then, we have withdrawn our support of the embargo because we've seen it didn't work. We've just noticed some news where Argentina has upped their exports to the Soviet Union, and so it's been ineffective. And it's greatly affected American agriculture.
So it's your position now, the Farm Bureau's position, that this embargo be lifted?
Yes, yes.
We've got a presidential election coming up, a Republican convention in progress at this very moment. How do Alabama farmers view Jimmy Carter as president?
I feel like, Bob, if the election were today, that the farmers of Alabama would vote Republican.
You do not feel Mr. Carter would carry the Alabama farmers?
I sure do not.
Is there anything he could do between now and November that might change that?
Well, Bob, that would be purely guesstimation on my part, but I would rather doubt it. The strengthening of farm prices, we have seen this happen within the last week. We've had quite a lot of strength in farm prices, but this has been a result of the drought in the Midwest, and you know, if corn prices are $10 a bushel and you don't have any corn to sell, of course you don't blame this on the government, but the condition you were in prior to that time, you do blame on the government, and the improvement in prices has not been a result of any action by the government. It's been as a result of the weather.
Your organization, I don't believe, endorses presidential candidates, but you do sometimes get involved in state politics. It's pretty well known that you're a pretty powerful group. Does the Alabama Farm Bureau plan to endorse a candidate in the U.S. Senate race in Alabama?
Not as an organization, Bob. We are individually supporting different candidates. You could pick a leader from one section of the state and he'd be supporting one candidate, and another place you'd have another candidate.
Who is Goodwin Myrick supporting for the U.S. Senate?
Goodwin Myrick is supporting Donald Stewart.
Even though he's a Democrat and on the Carter side, so to speak, as opposed to perhaps a Republican nominee?
And yes, sir. And if I don't change my mind, I'll be supporting Reagan in the presidential race.
Split a ticket?
Yes, sir.
Again, I'm shifting gears, bouncing around. Several months ago, a very big development at Alabama Farm Bureau and its affiliates, its insurance companies, which have been so successful. One of the most prominent business executives in Alabama, Mr. Ed Louder, retired after many years. He has not been replaced. When will that position be filled?
I don't know, Bob, at what point that might be done, or if it will be done in the immediate future. We've got some very capable people in our organization. We've got the Executive Vice President of Operations, Mr. Phil Richardson, who is a very qualified man to operate. We've got the Executive Vice President of Marketing, Mr. Boyd Christenberry, and I could name a number of other people in the organization. We have a strong organization, so it is not as important to replace an individual. You know, as important as I think I might be, that organization can operate without me also, because there's a lot of good people that makes up Farm Bureau.
I get the rather firm impression that Goodwin Myrick of little old Southside Alabama is running the show at Farm Bureau and the Farm Bureau insurance companies.
Well, Bob, I feel like that I am relating to the people and also to the board of directors, and for Goodwin Mike to be running. I think I am speaking the sentiments of our membership and leadership in trying to do the things that they want from their organization.
Goodwin, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.